earlier, more often and more deeply and for longer than other communities, because that's what racism is in this country. It doesn't matter if you're in Pendleton, or you're in Eugene, or you're in Ashland, or you're in Portland. That's a truism, because it's true in Detroit, and it's true in Flint, and it's true in Miami, because that's the history and, frankly, the present of America. But we knew that if we buckled down to engage and to deliver the services that people needed to stay alive, that businesses needed to stay open, that they would come to us for support and for service, that we could be of service to them, not just in Portland, but across the state and also across the region. How did we do that? How did we do that? We did that by creating the Oregon Cares Fund as a community activity with folks from all across our state to go to our state legislature and say, listen, Black-owned businesses are not getting the PPP loans. It didn't happen. They're not getting the federal EIDL loans. They need to keep their doors open. We've got to find another way. We went to our state legislature and to our governor at the time, Kate Brown, and said, listen, Governor, lots of things are happening in the community to try to keep people alive during this pandemic, but too little of that is reaching communities that are Black and African American. But we've got a way. So we're going to ask for these resources, and we won $62 million for the benefit of Black folks all across the state, including right here where we stand. Now, some folks in this room are like, that's nice, Black people are lovely, I'm really happy for you, but why do I care? You care because we're community. You care because we're community. And the way that we care about you, you care about us, and if we can't thrive, frankly, if you're not, and you can't truly be free if we aren't. That's our ethos, it's what I believe in, and it's what we live at the League. And this room we're sitting in now, the experience that we're sharing together, the fact that we're at Roundup for the 6th year in a row, woo! So excited about that. There's a part of that. So beyond the advocacy that we deliver at the state, local, and federal levels, we also deliver cultural activities. And this is one of those. It's our opportunity to have communication and conversations with communities all across the state. And I think we started during the pandemic, so we were virtual, talking to folks in Marion County, and then we were in Hood River, we've been in Medford, we were just out in Linton County. I'm glad to be back for our second community conversation in Pendleton. And this is our 4th time it's our 4th time in Eastern Oregon this year, but our 2nd time in Pendleton this year. It's important that I tell you this because I'll go back to our name. The Urban League of Portland's our name. It's been our name since inception nearly 8 years ago, but it doesn't entirely describe what we do now because we serve people all across this region. And Miss and her folks are an example of the way we want to reach out to our communities who are outside of Portland and the way we have been for quite some time. It's just that I don't have the guts to change the name. I don't. So I want you folks who are here to know we are your Urban League. We belong to you as you belong to us. The Urban League is in fact for all of us. We're responsible to you in the same way that you're responsible for your neighbors, for your local schools, for your elders. You're responsible for your community, for maintaining its culture, for sharing its history, and we are responsible for that too. I learned something coming to Roundup as a kid with my parents. I always used to love it and have a great time. But it wasn't until I was an adult when I learned that my dad didn't need to have fun out here. He used to be a little worried to be the only Black family he could see. And he would be worried about whether he'd keep his family safe. Now, I didn't know that. I was a kid and I had a great time. And I thank my parents for exposing me to so much of Oregon's wonder. And now it's my turn. Me and this wonderful Urban League team, our wonderful dedicated board of volunteers to the Urban League, to help others experience this. So I want to show of hands. Those folks who were Roundup for the first time this year, will you please raise your hand? Woo! Woo! Exactly that, right? Exactly that. There are people who want to come, and sometimes they say, well, I don't know, I'm afraid, I'm concerned, or it's just far away, and how do I get there? Maybe it's expensive, what do I do? Well, we're the Urban League, and we like to answer those questions. So I thank you for trusting us. Thank you for joining us. We have youth here as part of our program. We've got some of our program participants here, some of our elders are here, as well as Urban League staff, and then some of our members, those people who donate not only their time, but their money to help the Urban League do what it does. Yes, we're a nonprofit organization, but I tell folks, that's just my tax status. I gotta run a business. That means we gotta pay people. They gotta have health benefits. And they sure want their parking reimbursed when they go on places. And these hotels, y'all know they're not free. Even the Oxford Suites was a pretty penny during Roundup. There's no other way for us to make this work without our members and our jobs. So for those of you who have contributed to this event today, I thank you so much for being here. And before I bring Julia, our Vice President, up to move us forward on our program, I want to recognize Leonardo Drew, the artist whose work's upstairs. Did everyone go upstairs into the gallery and see his art? Yes! Leonardo, thank you so much for sharing your talent with us. We certainly appreciate it. How's food?
Fantastic.
That's what I'm talking about. And Jordan, I also want to thank you. I think we've got 3 Catlin Gable kids in the room right now, right? If you're a Catlin Gable kid, raise your hand. Hi. Jordan, don't do that. All right, there we go. It's a very small school, but I'm proud of it. We're small but mighty. Y'all, Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your work with this community and for joining us today. It's great to have you. Okay, my friends, this is the time where we can tell you more about the history of this area and also to highlight how Black history is very much a part of Eastern Oregon. One fact I learned 2 years ago is at one point in time, 20% of all the loggers in our state were Black. 20%, y'all! So imagine what that history was like and what must have happened to change that. It's certainly not true, well, it certainly wasn't true in the 70s and in the 80s anymore. But there's still a very rich history that we can share and talk about with one another. And beyond that, while many of us are visiting this community, there are other folks who call. So I'm so glad that we're going to be able to talk to our friends and neighbors, that you're going to be able to hear some of these stories about Triple Nickles, about George Fletcher, about Black Cowboys. Because again, y'all, the holder of all cowboys were Black and brown people, and they still are today. But we get left out of the movies. So people don't know. But we're going to change all that today. Thank you for being here. Julia, I will hand it over to you. Welcome, y'all. Welcome.
I need a microphone. I'm not don't have the range. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. I really appreciate everybody for coming out. It is really nice to be here in Pendleton. This is my first time. This is my first time at rodeo. My name is Julia Delgado. I'm the vice president of the Urban League of Portland. I've been with the league for about 11 years, and I continue to be in just absolute wonder and amazement of all that Oregon has to offer. I moved here in 2008. I'm very much a city mouse, so it feels really wonderful to be out here enjoying Eastern Oregon, and I just appreciate all the hospitality. Everybody's been very friendly. As we're here, I think it's important that we begin our program today with a land acknowledgement. Just about the lands in Oregon. So indigenous tribes and bands have been with the lands that we inhabit today throughout Oregon and the Pacific Northwest since time immemorial. And they continue to be a vibrant part of Oregon today. We would like to express our respect for the first peoples of this land, which are now present day 9 federally recognized tribes, and here in this region, specifically the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. It's important that we recognize and honor the ongoing legal and spiritual relationship between the lands, plants, animals, and people indigenous to this place that we now call Oregon. We recognize the pre-existing and continued sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribes who have ties to this place and thank them for continuing to share their traditional ecological knowledge and perspective on how we might care for one another, the land, so it can take care of us. And then additionally, we would like to make an acknowledgement of the labor that has built this country. So much of what we know in this country today, including its culture, economic growth, its development throughout history and across time, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their descendants who suffered the horrific transatlantic trafficking of their people, chattel slavery, and Jim Crow. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice, and we must acknowledge the tremors of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can still be felt and witnessed today.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. So I'm going to just kind of talk through what the program looks like today. I want to introduce our guest presenters. I'm going to point to them so that you know who they are when they come up. So our first presenter on the program today is going to be Nathaniel Hamlet. Nathaniel's right here, Catlin Gable alum, so shout out to Nathaniel. He's our young professional volunteer coordinator at the League, and he's going to be talking and sharing information more about what Nkenge mentioned, that the history of Black loggers in Maxville. And he's also going to share about the Urban League of Portland's volunteer auxiliary, the Young Professionals, because there are a lot of young Black professionals in the state, and they need to build community together. Additionally, we're going to have Debbie Rasmussen, who's right here up front, and also Anthony Bowman, who I haven't met, but who is in the room, potentially, right over here, and the curator and coordinator and curator of the Pendleton Air Museum, and they're going to be sharing really interesting information about the Triple Nickles, which is the 555th Parachute Infantry Battalion. So here in Pendleton, the Air Museum, it's a nonprofit foundation. Their mission is to acquire, preserve, interpret, demonstrate, and display items representing the history of the Pendleton Army Air Base. It's very cool. Then Crystalline Black, who's right here up front. She's a policy analyst with the Urban League, and she's going to share some history, some Black history, important Black history about Black Cowboys in the Pendleton Round-Up, with information from the Pendleton Round-Up and Happy Canyon Hall of Fame Museum, which we saw on our way into town, which I'm excited to visit. And then we will also have over here, Hermiston City Councilor Jackie Linton is here. So Councilor Linton will be presenting about being the first Black Hermiston City Councilor, a role she began in January. Jackie's also a member of the Hermiston Cultural Awareness Coalition, which was, we were here last year and we honored some community champions, and that was one of the community champions that we honored last year. So we're so happy to see Jackie here today. And then potentially, no, okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and present this. Oh, and then last thing, I have a plug for recycling. I would like to ask everybody that if all of our bottles are being recycled today, recycling is great in general, but it's great here today because all of the proceeds from the deposits will be going to the Lions Club for the Neighbor to Neighbor program, which was, again, a community champion. So I just want to say, please recycle, and there's blue bins just right outside the door. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Nathaniel Hanlett. Thank you.
Oh gosh.
I couldn't figure it out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Julia. Like she mentioned, my name is Nathaniel Hamlet. I'm the Young Professional Volunteer Coordinator for the Urban League of Portland, and I've been with the league for just about a year now. As Julia referenced, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Young Professionals program, and then I'm going to share some facts about Black loggers, and then I'll clear the way for some of our actual experts. So the Young Professionals program exists across the country, and it's a volunteer auxiliary group that serves to aid the goals of the Urban League of Portland, in addition to providing community, networking, social, professional development, and community engagement. Like Julia mentioned, in a city like Portland, in a state like Oregon and Southwest Washington, it's important to bring together Black folk because community is everything. So we're finishing our calendar for the 23-24 calendar year. Take a look at ulpdx.com/youngprofessionals. It's important, like President Herman Johnson said, that you support not only with your time and your effort, but with your money. Membership is $50, and it goes a long way for us putting on events and supporting our goals. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathaniel.
Okay, so Black loggers. In Oregon, African Americans were employed as loggers primarily in two towns, Maxville and Vernonia. Maxville, which is in northeast Oregon, east of the Wallowa, was home to African American loggers at a time when Oregon's constitution included a provision excluding Blacks from the state. We all have heard about the sundown towns here in Oregon, right? Yeah. Maxville had a population of about 400 residents, 40 to 60 of which were Black. It was the largest town in Wallowa County between 1923 and 1933. The Bowman Hicks Lumber Company, based in Missouri, recruited experienced loggers from throughout the South and Midwest for the Maxville logging operation, and most of them traveled by rail in boxcars to Wallowa County. The company built a new town for the loggers and their families, both white and Black, at nearby Bishop's Meadow. The influx of timber workers and their families was a major economic boon for Wallowa County. Many of the surrounding homesteaders, ranchers, and shop owners worked as loggers and mill workers who provided local food and services to the residents of Maxville. Economic conditions, especially during the Great Depression and the consequent downturn in the lumber market, unfortunately caused Maxville's decline. When the logging operation ceased shortly thereafter, Bowman Hicks closed the town in 1933. Several of the African American families moved to Wallowa, some moved to LeGrand, and some back to Portland to work in the shipyards. Maxville Heritage Interpretive Center has owned the land since June 10th, 2022, but has had access to the land since 2006 for educational purposes. The historic administrative lodge is currently being restored and reconstructed back to its original location at the site. The 240 acres include the original Maxville town of 96 acres. The site has been nominated for the National Historic Register. Awesome. The Maxville Centennial event, celebrated over 2 days, highlighted the 100 years of the Maxville town site. The event highlighted how the Maxville Heritage Interpretive Center is reimagining Maxville through restoration, healing, archaeology, collaborative indigenous interpretation, and connection, in addition to augmented reality. So that's my spiel on black loggers in Eastern Oregon, and I'm now going to turn it over to Debbie and Anthony from the Pendleton Air Museum to talk about the Triple Nickles. Thank you so much for the time.
I just want to thank you for having me here. I know Anthony's sitting out there. He does that to me all the time. I just want to do a little brief history of Pendleton and how it happened to be that the Triple Nickel came to Pendleton. What we started out as was Pendleton was, they had selected Pendleton to become an Army Air Corps field in 1940 of November. And they started to build in February of 1941. The first group to come here was the 17th Bombardment and their squadrons of B-25 North American Mitchells. Sorry, am I not talking? Whatever you are. So after they got here, then Pearl Harbor happened, and so that changed Pendleton a lot. So they went to the South Pacific, or actually they went to South Carolina to become the Doolittle Raiders. At that point, we kind of were slowed down a little bit in there, and we became a readiness base along with the maintenance base. But then things started to happen. A strange phenomenon started to happen. They started seeing these balloon bombs come over, and these Japanese balloon bombs were very, very creative. They sent 9,300 of these balloon bombs over the United States. They came from Japan up over the Aleutian Mountains to come down over the mainland of America. So on the Fort Benning, Georgia, there was a group that was led by Walter Morris, who was born in Waynesboro, Georgia in 1921. At around the age of 4, he moved to Newark, Georgia. In 1940, after graduating from high school out in Georgia, he came back and he joined the U.S. Army. So in the fall of 1943 and 44, when they started to see various things happening around, they made a selection that they were a service company for the Parachute School, and their job was security. They were to go around and walk and keep this facility safe from 4 p.m. in the afternoon until 8 a.m. But the men were looking for a purpose in their life. They were feeling like they were not being utilized and used in a way that would be prevented or would benefit everybody. So they made a decision. First Sergeant Walter Morris said to his men, "We need to start looking like soldiers." And so they started to act like soldiers. So in the fall of 1943, while the students that were at the school, learning to parachute, left, they would start to do push-ups, sit-ups, running. They did various jobs. They started to work at leaping off a 5-foot platform to learn how to land properly after parachuting out. After doing that, they started to learn how to go through the routine of hooking up their equipment and also to check it, how to pull their string at the proper time. And they did that by jumping out of the body of a C-47 cargo airplane. So one of the gentlemen, including Walter Morris, started to notice a change in these men. They were starting to have more confidence. They were starting to pay attention to what was going on. They were showing that they didn't have the inferiority complex that they had started with. But somebody else saw that change, and his name was General Riley Guffer, and he called Morris into his office. Now Morris was afraid. He thought, what did I do wrong? So not sure what was going to happen when he got there, the general asked him when he came in, he asked, "Can you explain to me what's happening? What's going on?" And he looked at him and he thought, well, I'm boosting the morale of my men. I'm making them feel more like soldiers. So the general wasn't mad, he wasn't angry. Matter of fact, he seemed a little impressed and a little excited about what he saw was going on. So he confided in them. I have a secret to share with you. I have been authorized to form and create a new all-black unit of paratroopers. They'll be called the Triple Nickel, the 555. And he asked Morris to serve as his first sergeant. Morris got to go through officer training, which was unheard of at the time. He got to learn how to be a firefighter. He got to learn how to be a real soldier and a true paratrooper. About May of 1945, May 5th to be exact, they were boarding a bus, or train to come to Pendleton, Oregon, because they'd been spotting these balloons. Now, as they were boarding the bus, they found out that one of these balloon bombs had been picked up by a minister's wife who was pregnant, 4 boys and a girl on a picnic from the church. All of them were killed. So as they came in, they realized that there was an enemy within the country that was coming here silently. They didn't know about it. So they came to Pendleton, they met with the U.S. Foresters, and they became smoke jumpers. Now, at first they thought their job was unimportant. Well, what good does it do us to be a smoke jumper? Why is that important? Well, because these bombs were designed to start forest fires, to decimate the Pacific Northwest. So it was very important that they did it. Morris questioned himself on several times, thinking, what's my worth? But as he was standing and he was watching, getting ready to bail into a fire, and he looked into the raging fire, and he thought to himself, I am important. This is my country, my children's country, and their children's country. And he decided that he had a purpose on there. So I'm not going to talk much longer. I've been accused of talking too much sometimes. He's smiling at me there. But I do want to show you, if Anthony will, there's a uniform hanging back there, and I'll have him go ahead and, if you get a chance to look at it, that's one of the paratroopers' uniforms. And the boots are back there also. We received some money from Walmart to do a Black History Month, and so we selected to do the Triple Nickel for us.
Cool.
So we're working on that. And we're working in a larger building, so we're really working hard to try and get a facility that we can actually accommodate a lot of the collection that we do have. So I want to just say these words, and then I'm going to have him run the thing for me. These are the words that Walter Morris had to say. He said, we succeed where we're not expected to succeed, and we overcame the pitfalls that were put there. We overcame, and it's a warm feeling to know that that color has nothing to do with it. It's not what's in one's heart. It's not what one thinks. It's what's in one's heart, one's spirit. And that should be a lesson to us all. We should have and will have a colorless society one day, and that will be the crowning jewel in this great country. And that was what he said. And I'll go ahead and run the video.
Well, there was 3 of us. We just graduated from high school in Santa Monica, California in 1941. And there wasn't anything to do, so we decided we'd go in the service. Well, we tried to join the Navy, but one of the boys was colorblind and the Navy wouldn't take him. So we joined and we looked at the Army and we seen all these bombs and machine gun bullets and stuff, and that kind of intrigued us. So we decided we'd join that, and there was an ordinance, and they sent us up here to Pendleton Field in 1941, 3 of us.
Pendleton, Oregon, a remote Wild West town, contributed disproportionately to American success in World War II. In 1941, the U.S. Army Air Forces established Pendleton Field. Units once based there engaged in the first U.S. offensive action of the war against Japan and contributed to ending the global conflict. Bomber crews who would become the famous Doolittle Raiders trained at and operated from Pendleton Field. The B-29s, which dropped atomic bombs on Japan, were supported by a maintenance squadron formed at the base. The first African-American parachute unit, the Triple Nickles, helped develop smoke jumping techniques from Pendleton Field. While thus promoting America's war effort, the base also deeply affected Pendleton and its people then and ever since. The Umatilla River rises in the Blue Mountains of northeastern Oregon, then flows west across the Columbia Plateau toward its confluence with the Great Columbia River. Pendleton began in 1851 as a trading post in the canyon of the Umatilla at the mouth of Mackay Creek. A few years later, the Umatilla Indian Reservation was established just east of the little settlement, above Wild Horse Creek. By 1881, Union Pacific tracks followed the canyon down out of the Blues through Pendleton, which became one of the leading wool, wheat, wood, and meat railheads in the world. By 1900, it was the fourth largest city in Oregon, boasting Pendleton Woolen Mills and the State Mental Hospital. The cowtown was also a regional commercial center and home to America's second oldest rodeo, the Round-Up, staged by community volunteers on 4 September days since 1910.
Woo! The Roundup was here. Well, we got to go to our first Roundup in 1941, of course. The Pendleton Field made arrangements with J.C. Penney's or somebody downtown. We could go down. We were only getting $21 a month. So we could go down and buy boots, hats, stuff, be cowboys, you know, and pay it off.
So with that, I'd like to thank you for having us here today, and you can come down and learn a little bit more about it. I also suggest if you have not had the opportunity to read Tana Lee Stone's book, Courage Has No Color, it's a great book to read, and it tells a lot of history in there. And I'd like to introduce I'd like to introduce Chrislyn.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystalyn Black. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a policy analyst with the Urban League of Portland. Hi, everyone. All right, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our Black Cowboys. So first is George Fletcher. George Fletcher was one of the best cowboy and bronco riders in the first decade of the Pendleton Round-Up. George once said that he learned to ride broncos on a barrel and that he was 12 years old when he first started the rodeo. George was known as a sloppy rider, but his style was relaxed and flowed with the Broncos movements. When a group of cowboys from the Pendleton area formed the Cavalry Troop D with Lee Caldwell as captain to serve in the First World War. Fletcher joined them and went to war. He said he never rodeoed after he returned from the war due to an injury. George started a new way of life and lived in the Pendleton area on and off, working on ranches as a cowhand. He was known as a loyal and dependable cowboy who could be trusted to do a good job. He was known to the Pendleton Round-Up Hall of Fame in 1969 as a part of the inaugural class of 9 inductees. George unfortunately died in 1973. He is on the photos on the right, my right, your left, top and bottom, they're both George. And then on the left, my left, is Jesse Stahl, the next cowboy that I would like to touch on. Jesse came from Tennessee as a young man to California, where he made his home until his death. He began riding bucking horses in 1913 and competed from New York to California and was likely the best black bronco rider of all time. He was a great bronco rider, but was most remembered for winning first and getting third. Jesse and another black cowboy used to exhibit bareback horse with George Fletcher, riding backwards, face to face, and entertaining the crowd. He was quite the athlete and a good bulldogger. In 1917, he set a record at the Pendleton Round-Up for dodging a single steer, a record that stood for many years. Jesse rodeoed until 1936 and passed in 1938. Next slide. Awesome. Next is Charles Sampson, called the Jackie Robinson of rodeo. Bull rider Charles Sampson was born in 1957 and grew up outside of Los Angeles, California. He became involved with horses in the Cub Scouts, and by 13 years old, he owned his first calf. A Boy Scout trip in 1969 led him to bull riding. At just 17, Charles won his first rodeo competition, subsequently receiving a scholarship to Central Arizona College. Despite numerous arena injuries, he couldn't be held back from success. At the height of his career, Charles was riding 30 to 35 bulls a month, keeping him on the road and in rodeos for more than 300 days a year. He never rested. In one 5-day period, Sampson managed to compete in 8 rodeos from Oregon to Texas. Charles rodeoed for numerous years at the Pendleton Round-Up and was a 2-time bull riding champion. He retired from the sport in 1994 and 2 years later was inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. In 2008, he was inducted into the Rodeo Hall of Fame at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. More recently, Charles was inducted into the Cowboy of Color Museum in Fort Worth, Texas, and the Pro Bull Riders Ring of Honor. Next is Fred Whitfield. He was born in 1967 and raised in the small town of Cypress, Texas. Fred grew up wanting to be a cowboy. Fred specialized in calf roping and commenced his rodeo career with the 1990 overall and calf roping PRCA Resistol Rookie of the Year titles. Fred made rodeo history in 1999, capturing both his 4th calf roping title and the all-around, thus becoming the first professional African-American world champion cowboy ever. At 8 times world champion, 7 as a tie-down roper, and once as an all-around, Fred was a Pendleton Round-Up contestant for more than 20 years. He had won 3 Pendleton Round-Up championships in tie-down roping in 1996, 2005, and a tie in 1995.
Who's ever heard of Fred Whitfield? I love it. That's why we're here, y'all, to learn more about the history that belongs to all of us. Thank you, Kristen.
Mm-hmm. And he was the first African-American to win the tie-down roping at the Roundup. Fred was only the 3rd cowboy in history to surpass the $2 million mark in career earnings and became only the 2nd African-American cowboy in PRCA history to win a world title and the 1st to win an all-around title.
Nice.
Fred was inducted into the Pendleton Round-Up and Happy Canyon Hall of Fame earlier this week on September 10th, making him only the 2nd black cowboy after George Fletcher to be inducted into the Hall of Fame in Pendleton. So thank you everyone for taking the time to learn about our black cowboys in Pendleton Round-Up, and I will now pass it on to Julia.
Thank you so much, Crystal, and that was really great and very informative. This, initially we had invited a friend of the Urban League and a Pendleton historian to come, so this Leon Ransom was meant to be here, but he's not here today, so I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about him and plug his book. So Leon is a historian for the Pendleton community. He was featured in our State of Black Oregon report, and he actually grew up knowing George Fletcher, so he shared those stories in various capacities, and the book Red, White, Black, A True Story of Race and Rodeo, he shared his memories there about George Fletcher, and then also in the book Letterbuck, George Fletcher, the People's Champion. Again, he provided sort of the biographical information and interviews for that, and he's a Pendleton resident. We wish he was here. But before I move on,
I have to say this about Mr. Ransom. So he wasn't able to be with us today, but one of the reasons that the Urban League is at Roundup every year is because of Mr. Leon. He was such a wonderful host, and we said, hey, I kind of want to bring some people out to Roundup. It's hard to find rooms, but we're going to try to rent a house, and then we're going to be in the parade, and we're going to try to kind of figure that out. But he helped me as I was bumbling along, and he would meet us over there to help us find the right wagon, make sure we're all hitched. The first time Mr. Ransom ever participated in the Westward Ho parade was with us.
Awesome.
This is his town. And what he told us was that he never really felt like he could be a part of it until we invited him to. Y'all, when I say community is all of us, that's what I mean. Sometimes you think, well, it's him, he's a cowboy, he's look. Yeah, sometimes it takes another reach, another touch, another request, a little support. And then the year after that, mind you, his at the time 98-year-old dad would come back to Roundup every year. He lived in Portland at that point. We would come out here for the week and have a great time. So they had a family union like other folks do for Roundup, but they weren't participating in some of the really exciting parts of it, frankly, as insiders, because they felt like outsiders living in their own town. And that breaks my heart, but that's why we do placemaking activities like this as the Urban League, not only to bring folks to a new experience who are from a different town, but the folks who are already here, to show them that it really is theirs, and if we have to be the ones to open those doors, we're happy to, because that's part of our job as the Urban League. Beyond that, the year after, our second year, Leon's sisters, they joined us in the Westward Ho parade. So now we got the whole Ransom family. Leon's riding a horse, one of our staff members riding a horse, we're walking, we're in our horse and buggy, and his sisters are with us too. They all grew up in this town, and they told me the same thing. This is my first time ever being in this parade. Y'all, so when I invite you to come to these things, when I ask you to be a part of it, when I ask for your donations, when I ask you to support us, I'm doing it, yeah, the Urban League of Portland, sure, but it's for folks like Mr. Ransom, who has done so much to make this community, frankly, a rich and warm place, but who could probably use a little extra love himself. So thank you for being here and giving us a moment to honor him, because he's really one of my very favorite people. And look at this man, if he ain't a cowboy, nobody is. The next speaker, I know I'm still doing it to you, Julie, I'm sorry. I want to recognize our state treasurer, Tobias Reed, has joined us. Can you wave for us, Tobias? Another event, but wherever you are, our food is much better than that. So if you'd like to grab a plate, we can get you one. We're glad to have you here. Make yourself comfortable.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
and I'm going to turn it over to another elected official. Again, Hermiston City Councilor Jackie Linton is here, and I'd like to hear from her. Please join us.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I want to thank the president and everyone involved, and I remember Stephanie Phillips' name because I talked to her a lot. I've met a lot of people today in your names, so I'm sorry, I don't remember them. But thank you for having me. And how does a shy person growing up in a small town of 5,000 end up being city councilor in a town that now only has 0.03 population of African Americans, and the majority of them are children? Oh, let me thank my grandsons for coming today. They're 10-year-old twin brothers, 5th graders, and I took them out of school today. My 2 older grandchildren, my daughter, and myself all started new jobs. And so I told them, you guys can't take a chance on losing your job. I'm retired, so if I lose mine, I have a check. And you're not going to ask me for money. But anyway, I grew up in Hermiston. I'll be really quick. Grew up in Hermiston. Went to, my mom got married again, went up to Tacoma, finished high school up there, came back and worked, and it was about a little over 5,000 then. So when I got laid off, there wasn't many jobs, so I went back to Tacoma, ended up with the post office, DOD first, post office, retired. Went to Georgia just to babysit the 9-year-old granddaughter. And then my grandmother was there 4 years, and she said that at the time she was living, it's time for you to come home. So I came home. And so I was invited to come to a city council meeting. And I was thinking, oh, we can go to those things? I didn't know. And so I went, and I always enjoyed talking politics anyway. So I went and I just kept going. I started going to all of the meetings, every single meeting that was going on. I got involved, gave my opinions about different things that I felt they were doing correctly, and I felt that they shouldn't vote that way. And so the lady that had the position, Lori, she represented our area, which was working and working poor. And so one of the things that she voted on, I was like, no. So I said, well, you know, if you were on city council, then you have a chance to give your vote. Now, everybody might not vote the same way you vote, but you have that opportunity to speak up. You can't complain unless you get involved.
That's right.
So I decided to run. The first time I ran, I didn't make it. I didn't know that I had to go out and talk to people again. I know nothing about that type of politics other than talking. So the next time I knew what to do. I went around, I talked to people, and I told them how I felt, and I told them why I was running, and the different things that they was voted on at the time that I was not for. And so I ended up winning because they felt the same way. Now, at the time, I was not thinking about I was the first black person because I was just focused on, I got to get in there and so I could be heard. Yes, and so when I was interviewed, I think it was the OPB, or is that what that radio station? Okay. And they said to me, what is it like being the first black person on city council? And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. So I had to come up really quick. Well, it's great. And so as a counselor, you know, I'm able to, like I said, state my opinion and let them know how I feel. And we have a discussion. And everybody, since I was going to the meetings like 7 years before I ran, and everybody has always been respectful on the council. Any time I want to ask a question to the directors, the mayor, anyone, they welcome me to talk to them, or talk to them in person. And so it's been a good experience, and we have our challenges, you know, like any other town. But it's been really good, so thank you. I will now pass it over to Roberta to share information about Black contemporary artist Leonardo Drew.
All right, I think I'm going to just use my voice because I'm a little better at that. I have a tendency to drift with the microphone, which makes people nuts. Thank you so much for coming. We're so pleased to have everybody here, and we're so happy you got to meet Leo, and he had time in his schedule to come and hopefully visit with everybody a little bit and at least say hi. Our relationship with Jordan Schnitzer allows us to bring amazing work to Pendleton. And that does a few things. I had a conversation with a community member the other day, and she was like, oh, you know, you don't sell it, and it doesn't make you any money. So, you know, is it really worth it? And I got the opportunity to tell her exactly why it's worth it. We get to bring artists like Kara Walker, Enrique Chagoya, Louise Bourgeois, Ellsworth Kelly, Chuck Close, and Leonardo Drew was the next person on our list. To be able to have kids of color come into this gallery and see themselves represented in this community, I think has so much value. And for us to be able to show not just an artist of color, but one of the best artists working in the United States today. I don't know if you guys have that just met him today, look up his work when you get home. He's a big deal. Yeah. And we're so pleased that he took the time to come out here to visit Pendleton. We're really humbled by that. The other thing is that, you know, we try to get every school kid in this building every year, and we try to get funding for that. One of the things that does is it allows kids to feel comfortable who grew up in a rural area, who might not have an opportunity to come into a beautiful building like this. Gives them the confidence to know they belong everywhere. They belong in nice spaces, and they should feel comfortable doing that. And that's a big part of our mission. And so the other thing is for people in the community to get an opportunity to get connected with some really big names. And we had one of our board members came back from the Bilbao in Spain, and she was so excited because she saw Louise Bourgeois spider sculpture at the Bilbao, and she knew who it was, and she knew about her work. And that kind of education, I mean, we always think of arts education sometimes as, you know, we're making things with popsicle sticks and stuff, but we try to think really big about arts education and the social development that can help us provide for everybody in the community. So I'm really glad that you're here. I'm glad you got an opportunity to see the exhibit. If you haven't come up, I'm going to scramble up there and relieve my staff person. And if you didn't get a chance to make some paper, come up and we'll have that there all day. All right, thank you so much.
I just want to thank you and your team for having us. We like to use local spaces and places. We're a community-based organization, so we like to work with community-based organizations. But my team has really enjoyed the privilege of talking with y'all, of planning our sort of paper-making activity, and then using this space. So I just want to say thank you. I know it's Roundup. I know you're busy. I know there's never enough time, but you make space and place for us, and it means a lot. Thank you.
Well, and I have to say, we can't say enough about Stephanie and her team and the work that they do.
Again, I just want to say thank you very much, Roberta, for hosting us and for coming up to talk about the artists and the center, which has really been a wonderful host. Now we'd like to turn this over to a Q&A. I'm sorry, much taller than the microphone. We'd like to turn it over to a Q&A type session. So basically, we want to invite anybody who's here, if you have any questions or comments that you want to share with our presenters, any of the folks that are here in this room, we'd invite you to do so now. And you're welcome to come up and stand next to me and ask your question, or I can repeat it for the microphone. If anybody has any questions, comments, not mandatory, but welcome. Yes, please.
I would like to say the boots on display back there was worn by Mr. Cunningham, who graduated jump school in 1945. And he lived here. He also served in Korea. After the war, he became a smoke jumper with the Forest Service. And these men were very unique because they were going into a new field. They were very innovative. A large percentage of what is currently used, like the letdown rope, they learned to jump into the trees and how to do that at personal injury. That the pickaxe was used by the Triple Nickel in at least 3 Oregon fires. The uniform is a replica. It's an original World War II uniform, but is unissued, so it is what they would have wore and that. So, but the 2 other items were actually used and worn by Triple Nickel soldiers.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank the Urban League for coming to Pendleton. I want to thank the caterer. The food was amazing. I also want to share that on Main Street there are bronze statues, and one of the bronze statues is George Fletcher, and there's a story that is told at the statue. So if you have the opportunity, I would encourage you to go down and see the statue and read that story. Thank you again for coming. My name's Rob Corman. I'm the city manager for the city of Pendleton.
There's also a sign for the Triple Nickles along Main Street at the corner of what? Immigrant Main.
Immigrant Main.
And Ann's Catering is in Richland, and we've been there before, and they're delicious.
Brenda and I was walking around, and there was a big, huge statue of the United name at all. Can anybody tell us?
Where was the statue?
Where was it?
It was right where we were sitting. And we was coming.
Right at the entrance of the Pendleton.
The letter buck statue?
Across from the letter buck, the horse. That's what you're talking about, the man on the horse?
No, he wasn't on.
No, that's the letter buck statue.
That's an Indian costume.
We'll try to figure it out. We'll try to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it was.
Indian costume.
The George Fletcher statue
Or the
one out there.
the one, I think the one she's talking about is Burke.
is the Burt.
No,
Chief
Burke.
Oh, Chief Burke.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I think Chief Burke is on the 100 block.
And I don't believe the plaque is on it. I think it was destroyed in an accident last year.
And then right across the street from him is,
Stella.
no, Stella. There's lots of statues down there.
That's the takeaway. Walk down Main Street, look at
Chief
the
Burke was
statue.
a local chief here. He served as the Indian chief for like 82 years. And he was like 97 or 98 when he passed. He was very active in the community. And some of his descendants are still active in the community.
Okay, if any other questions, comments? Again, we just really appreciate everyone coming out.
And we're so happy. We have our last part of our program is we just want to honor the folks, community champions here in Pendleton. And I'm going to turn it over to our president, Nkenge Harmon Johnson, to bestow this honor upon these folks.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, so one of the things that's important that we do as the Urban League is when we're visiting communities, we're a part of these communities, but there's also organizations, of course, that are on the ground doing similar work or work that we believe in and want to support. So we use our platform as the Urban League to uplift those organizations, to tell folks about them that might otherwise know about them, but frankly, more importantly, to pat them on the back because the work we do in community is hard. It's hard, and there's never enough time, and there's always more need. So whether we have an opportunity to celebrate an affordable housing and mental health services provider in Lincoln County, or we're celebrating folks up in Hood River, we're providing food and helping to increase food and nutrition access. Or if we're down in Medford and celebrating Afro Scouts, a group of parents that got together to create their own scouting program for girls and boys to better connect them with their own heritage and to engage in community. Wherever we are, we find organizations that are doing work that we deeply believe in. And it's at the Urban League, it's our job to help support and highlight the excellence and give them an atta-girl or an atta-boy. You are seen, you are appreciated by us, and we certainly hope that you will continue to do the good work. So that's what our community champions are all about. We also have the chance to give folks a little bit of bling. You know, it's nice. So first up, I want to thank, and actually we met yesterday, that was fun. I love Pendleton, it's such a big little town. We want to recognize Neighbor to Neighbor Pendleton. Neighbor to Neighbor is comprised of people from all walks of life concerned about the disadvantaged in this community, especially those who do not have a home of their own, or folks who find themselves living on the streets. Neighbor to Neighbor Pendleton are all volunteers, and they come from diverse backgrounds and beliefs. Neighbor to Neighbor Pendleton supports our homeless folks in their efforts to end their houselessness. This organization provides services, essential care, shelter, meals, and other, frankly, love and support to those people who are experiencing homelessness via the Neighbor to Neighbor Day Center. They have a warming station and Beta's Cafe as well. This is the kind of work that really is hand-to-hand and face-to-face and neighbor-to-neighbor. I think it's amazing, and I was delighted to bump into you yesterday, but we want to honor neighbor-to-neighbor. If you will, please put your hands together so that we can welcome them. We have Jeanette Heron, the Board of Directors. If you will do us the favor of just telling us a little bit about why the work charges you up, I'd certainly appreciate that. Come on over. I would love that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's wonderful. Appreciate it. Well, I'll first start about why this work charges me up. Kind of like Jackie, I showed up because I heard about it and they told me you could just walk in. And they were really welcoming. I started attending board meetings and volunteering at the warming station. And it's the people. the relationships I develop with the people that we support, knowing who they are, watching the successes, being there when there aren't successes, and letting them know that we are their family, because some of them don't have family. I think what we do is really important. I have a real job. This is the one I love. Like the other one too, but I love this one. We think that the work we do is important. Last year, we provided 125 nights of shelter for people in motels because we were still in pandemic mode. This year, and we supported about 165 different people in doing that. We're hoping this year we're going to be opening as our regular shelter. They'll be back in what we consider our home for them. It's a lot better environment. We get a lot more time with them. We get to spend meals with them and evenings with them and those kinds of things, so we're hopeful for that. We also do a day center on Monday so that folks that don't have the opportunity to get cleaned up, to get clean clothes, to just know that there's still somebody out there that's thinking about them during the season when we're not providing shelter because it's too cold outside. So we think that that is really important as well. And I was told I could give a plug for things we need in the community, so I'm going to do that. From Shirley, our super volunteer, she says, we always need backpacks, we always need sleeping bags, and we always need men's jeans that are smaller in waist and still pretty long in length. And for people who are interested, you can contact us at Neighbor to Neighbor Pendleton. We have a Facebook page, we have a website, and you can find our phone numbers there if you actually want to talk to somebody. And thank you so much.
Thank you. So here's what's cool. Yes, make a plug for what you want and what you need. And we send your bling, we deliver it to you, so don't worry. Y'all, the Urban League started its renewed housing program about 8 years ago. And I say renewed because we offer housing services at different times when the needs of our community demanded it. Our housing program is now larger than the entire Urban League was 5 years ago, so it's substantial. But there's a need there, and our program serves folks in the Quad County area, so that's Multnomah County and Clackamas County and Washington County and Clark County over in Washington. But in the past 2 years, frankly during the pandemic, it went further than that, and we've been able to help people in counties across the state avoid homelessness. How do we reduce homelessness? We help people avoid becoming homeless in the first place. By being able to cover their rent when times are hard, when they're in between jobs, because once you're on the streets, getting back inside of doors is so very difficult to do. So we've been really, frankly, honored to be able to help additional communities wrap their arms around neighbors. You hear this is all volunteer work. In most of our communities in this state, houseless services are provided by volunteers, not by the county, not by the city, and not by the state, by churches, by friends, and by neighbors. We do good work, but we could do better, which is why the Urban League of Portland fights in the legislature for funding, not just for us and the work that we do, but for the work that you do too. This past session was somewhat successful. The governor had a big package that she rolled out with additional resources for folks all around the state, but we don't think it's enough. Right now, there's enough money in the state coffers. Hey, treasurer, you can tell us how much later. But it's one of those times when we're not running lean, and we know there's plenty of lean times in Oregon. We know how that goes, and we don't have a sales tax to help make it better. But right now, there's enough money in the state coffers that we can pour into organizations that are already doing this work so they can not only be stable, but can flourish and really help people when they need it most. Because these flush times won't always be here. And when belts get tightened, it's going to become even harder for us to serve the folks who need us most. So it was our honor to be in the legislature this past session with a number of, frankly, paid lobbyists who understand this work, who are fighting for you, even when you don't see us. And that work is for the Urban League. That work is for other organizations like Neighbor to Neighbor who need resources. So I want to tell you that when you hear from us, or when you hear from your local leaders about, hey, I'm wondering about this bill or the other thing, or the Urban League said X or Y, know that it's because we're telling them, you got houseless people in Pendleton too, not just downtown Portland. It's because we're telling them you have houseless people in Ashland too, not just in the west side of Portland. Hey, Eugene, you got students who need houses to live in, sure, but you've also got houseless people, working poor people who can't afford to live here. We're spreading the message with our state lawmakers, for that matter, local lawmakers too, about the resources that are necessary, not just for our own organization, but for yours too. And I wanted to let you know that because it really is an honor of ours to help fight for you as you're fighting for your neighbors. Thank you so much for being here today. One of the other benefits of being an Urban League Community Champion is that we will then send out information about your organization to our members, so they know, we now know your needs, and they will know them too. And we hope that will add a little bit of a bump to your efforts to find those jeans and to get those backpacks and those sleeping bags. Next up, we want to honor Councilor Jackie Linton. You heard from her story a little bit ago. And as we highlight living history in Eastern Oregon, I want to say thank you so much, Ms. Jackie, for being the first Black Hermiston City Councilor, although it came as a shock to you. It was a shock to me too, I'll just tell you that right now. And thank you for your efforts in supporting community and for showing up. You really are a role model, and I think help further to let folks know that stereotypes are just that. They're not reality. So we honor you, we appreciate you, we thank you so much as our community champion. This will be yours. And we should take pictures with this thing. We'll do that later? Yeah? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Okay, great. So this will be yours. Would you like to say a few more words?
I'll just say a couple.
You're so shy, but I know you like to, let the people know.
Well, I was asked to talk about a few of the things that I've done. I'm on the Community Accountability Board. I've been on that for 2 years, and we had a break because of COVID. I volunteered for that. I volunteered to be on the Budget Committee of Hermiston. I am now, and I was going to the Safety Committee meetings with the police department because I wanted to know what was going on and making sure people are treated right. And so, as a counselor, they just went ahead and put me on that committee. I volunteered for the warming station, and that's our homeless people for the winter time so they can be in shelter. And then that goes just during the winter time until about March. I'm joined the Altruistic Committee. I love that committee as well. I love doing everything that I do because it helps people with loans, low income, make soup for Desert View to feed the homeless, and a lot of different other things. And then, of course, you heard about the Hermiston Cultural Awareness Coalition, and then City Councilor. Thank you. Thank you.
Yay. And thank you for coming, fellas. Right, our last honoree, and we're wrapping up soon. If you want seconds, you can get them. What now?
I went first.
You went first. Fair enough. Our last honoree is not able to be here today, but we still want to recognize them. We know it's Roundup and folks got a lot of stuff going on, especially those of us who are in service of community. So we want to recognize Nkenge, Community Financial Services, also known as NCFS. Oh, you just walked in. Nice. Thanks for being here. This organization is dedicated to improving the financial well-being of individuals and families through safe and affordable loans, credit, and helping to build personal assets and wealth. Listen, you should know that Tobias Reed, our state treasurer, is here, and he gives a darn about these topics. So don't let him get out of here without finding out how he and his office can help you do more of what you're already doing. Thanks, Tobias. Nkenge Community Financial Services provides loans, home ownership assistance, business development services, and provides services for youth and adult financial education to members of Umatilla Confederated Tribes, reservation residents, and tribal employees. I'm pretty stoked about that. The Urban League operates a pretty robust empowerment program in which we offer financial training for community members and for our program participants. It's very important work to help people thrive in our communities. So if you will please come on up and say a few words. It is our honor to honor you for all the work you do here. Would you tell us a few words about your work and let us know how we can support you in all that you do? Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry for being late. I volunteer for the parade.
It's Roundup, no apologies.
Yes, so it took me a long time to get ready. Yeah, so thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for this. This is amazing. I'm Jacob Wallace. I'm the Business Services Manager for Nkenge Community Financial Services. Our president was supposed to be here to accept this on our behalf, but she is not feeling well today, so I ran up here when I realized that, and so, yeah, but I'm happy to be here. And yeah, we are 3 different departments that were turned into just one organization. And it's been great to be able to really navigate these 3 rivers now, right, into this one body, and create this empowerment group to really help increase generational wealth and financial knowledge within our Native communities. So, and the outreach is really, really important part of it, and I know that that's something that you guys really bring to the table, and I think that's really powerful to be able to do. So thank you so much for this, and I appreciate it, and definitely oh yes, I totally will. So we also do we are one of 2 Native nonprofit CDFIs within Oregon. Yeah. It's really cool. So we decided to team up with the other Native nonprofit CDFI, which is, great question. Sorry, Indian country is about acronyms. We love acronyms. But a CDFI is a community development financial institution. So it really does embody exactly that. It's there to create financial wellness, education, and create accessibility, right? So ATNI EDC, another acronym, is the other CDFI, and we co-host an event called the Northwest Native Economic Summit. Last year we did our first fashion show, which is kind of my brainchild that I've always wanted to do for my reservation. But we have so many beautiful work, artwork, and creatives that we're doing stuff on kitchen tables. And I was like, okay, great, but let's get you a platform to be able to get you out of the kitchen table and be able to use that kitchen table for your families, right? And then create a platform for you to be known and to create commerce, right? So that's what we did last year. It was super successful. We're going to be doing it again this year, October 3rd through the 6th, and then the fashion show is October 4th, and that is open to the public. You just have to purchase a ticket, which can be found on our website as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, I'm just here to close this out. I just want to, again, just really give a heartfelt thank you to everybody who made the time to come and be with us and be in community here in Pendleton. I want to thank our partners at Visual Aid for recording tonight. I want to take a time to thank our sponsors. They're on the back of the program, so you can take a look at the people who sponsored us to come out here, which we very much appreciate. We want to take a moment to thank the Pendleton Center for the Arts, where we are right now, for this really beautiful space. We want to thank Ann's Best Soul Food because everybody ate so good, and I'm about to, and I'm very grateful for that. I want to say that Urban League of Portland is a membership-based organization. We're a community-based nonprofit, and becoming a member of the Urban League is just like becoming a part of our Urban League family. And we really encourage you to become a member of the Urban League by going to our website at ulpdx.org. There's a membership link in a couple of different places that you can find, and we'd really love it if you would join us in our mission of empowerment around the state. I'm going to give one more plug for our upcoming event. Our annual Big Fancy Gala is back in person this year, so if anybody's going to be in the Portland area, please put on your best looks and join us on September 28th for the Equal Opportunity Awards celebration. That's going to be at the Oregon Convention Center. I'm going to give one more plug for recycling, so please make sure that when you're on your way out that there's blue bins and you can recycle at those blue bins. And those, again, they go to neighbor, which we know that they have a list of needs, so this will definitely help with that. But also donate those needs as well, backpacks, sleeping bags, jeans, men's jeans. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's everything I have to say.